Well, Katie, it is great to see you again. I'm very excited to talk to you. And I'm so glad that you finally shared about box therapy on the internet so that we can talk about it. I've been so excited for you. As you know, I just got back from South Africa and I was staying with Ethan Pringle, and we were staying in the same little cabin that you and Keenan stayed at with him last year. So it was super fun to like hear some of his stories. And then I was there. We were together in the cabin when he heard about your news from you. And I almost reached out right away, but I was like, she hasn't chosen to share it yet. I don't want to like blast her with this, but I'm so excited for you and so stoked to hear more about this amazing achievement. And it's just always great to talk to you. So welcome back. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for the kind words.
Of course. Yeah, I'm so stoked for you. I think first off, I just want to hear, how did it feel? How did it feel to climb the hardest and most badass boulder of your life so far?
Yeah, it felt good. And I was talking about this weekend. It was really it was a slow build. And in a lot of ways it felt anticlimactic actually, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I think at first it really felt like, anytime that you do the hardest boulder that you've ever done and it didn't feel particularly different from that. And then like kind of sharing a little bit more and thinking about it in like a bigger context, it definitely obviously feels different and super meaningful. And yeah, I'm proud of myself for doing it, and it was a really cool experience. And I feel like it's opened some doors for me. So yeah.
I hope so. It should have. Like, this is legendary news, It's I think I remember hearing probably third hand. It wasn't from Sean himself. It was Sean to someone to me. But I guess Brooke had a session on it and did really well. And I was like, that is sick. Like, I hadn't thought about, it just was like, oh, that one seems like a really good contender for someone like you. And I had no idea that you were going to go and try it. But it makes a lot of sense, like knowing your superpowers and like knowing a little bit about the boulder and the style and things like that. I was just like, yes, that is so amazing. But we're going to dive into all this, but you of course have this incredible resume, but you skipped V15, which is so sick. And like V15, Ashima did a V15, and that's kind of it, like no other women have yet. And you just jumped right past that. And this is like such big news for climbing. It's just so cool.
Thanks.
Why this boulder? I think that was something I was really curious about right away. Like, you haven't climbed V15 yet, but more than that, this one's just tough, dude. Like, the hike, I remember reading just recently, I was reading a written article by you. You said, 7 sessions, and you estimated that you hiked like 90 miles to do this boulder or something like that. 6 miles each way. It's way the hell back there in the middle of nowhere in the mountains, Colorado. I don't know all the V15 boulders in Colorado, but I know that there must be one that's crimpy, that's your style, that's way closer to the road. So of course we're talking about box therapy, V16. Why box therapy? Why was that your project this summer?
Yeah. No, that's actually, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's like there probably are, or it's just circumstantial. Like, you know, crimpy V15 next to the road. Like, I think of the game, but the season's like not right. Like, it's really hot in the summer in Boulder Canyon, and you want to do that one in like the dead of winter. And so, I'm just never in Colorado in the winter, honestly, because I like everything else is in season in the winter. So I'm usually in California or like, the West Coast in general. And honestly, don't have that much interest in being in Colorado in the winter besides the game. Because I just like I spend summers there, and like that's kind of been enough time for me. So it was almost entirely circumstantial. Like there's definitely a bunch of V15s that I want to do, and I haven't really tried very many. And yeah, almost none of them are close to me because there's not that many in California. There's definitely a lot in Yosemite, but they're all V12.
They're all what?
Um, they're all V12.
All your projects are V12?
No, just like the really hard stuff in Yosemite is not graded V15 because for
I
some
see.
reason
I
we don't.
see.
Yeah.
I see. They
Um,
probably are like in that range, but they're just graded V12. I gotcha.
yeah. Yeah. Or a little bit harder, but so yeah, I feel like I hadn't really tried any V15s, and didn't have any on my radar that were in season, like in a place that I wanted to be in that season, and that were in my style. So I felt like Box was like a pretty obvious next project for me and was likely going to be easier than like almost all the V15s on my list just because of the style. Like it fits me so well. It only has ascents from short people. And I was just going to be in Colorado for the summer. So yeah, and I feel like I'm not like a huge hiker. Like I don't choose to just hike, but I can always get down with a hike. And like I've been in the Colorado Alpine like 4 or 3 of the last 4 summers, and you kind of just like almost immediately adapt. You're like, okay, after work, I'm hiking an hour in and an hour out. Like, yeah, I'll just adapt. So while I would have preferred a roadside project, I felt like it was just like something that needed to happen. And like you hike and you get there and you like devote a whole day to the experience or multiple days and then like you climb. So yeah, it is definitely, it's a beautiful hike too. So that helps.
That makes sense. Yeah. So, summer, it's hot everywhere. There's not that many options. And this one just made the most sense. Maybe it was the only option really that made sense. Do you want to describe the setting a little bit more and the boulder a little bit more? I actually, I know a little bit about it. I, of course, have like followed all the ascents. I know that Daniel Woods did the FA and Drew Ruana and Sean Bailey have been the only repeats before you. So you're the 4th ascent, which is sick. And it just sounds like it's way the hell back in the mountains in Colorado somewhere. I don't really know where it is. I think it sits at like 10,000 feet or something, but can you describe the setting and like getting there, the logistics a little bit more?
Yeah, it's about like 10 or 11 thousand feet, I think. So it's actually a lot lower than some of the other alpine bouldering in Colorado, which sort of makes the season tough. It gets
Lincoln's
hotter.
like 14,000 or something, or 13,000. Lincoln's like way up there, right?
The summit is 14K, but the bouldering's at like 12.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like it gets hot there, like hot and buggy a lot sooner than Lincoln does, for example. So yeah, and then the shoulder seasons are quite snowy. So you have to like so the first day I went up and I basically just like dug it out. And then after it was cool to see like how fast it melted, and then all of a sudden you're just like in this like lush meadow, and there's a river that like runs right by it that comes down from Box Lake, which is this like alpine lake like 5 minutes away. And it's like one in a few alpine lakes up there. So it's like way back in Wild Basin in RMNP, and you start in like Allen's Park. And it's I always like when it's like super hot at the car, and then you walk up and you're like, okay, like it gradually gets cold enough to climb. So I think that's cool. And yeah, it's just like it's maybe the only like meadow boulder that I've ever done in the Alpine. And I've really never seen any part of the park that is like so green and just like full of water. And there is like a pretty big talus field near it. But Box is probably the biggest boulder in that talus field. So it feels a bit anomalous.
Wow. Yeah, that's super cool. That's super cool. Are people,
Yeah.
it's a tangent, but are people exploring all the other boulders in that area? Like, is that going to be a zone, you think, eventually?
I mean, it's still pretty far back there compared to other like unexplored talus fields. So you have to be motivated. There's definitely, there's some people out there exploring this year. And I walked around a little bit, and there's some other lines that definitely have been done up there, and some easier stuff. But yeah, if you keep on going like all the way back in the talus field, there's like some huge like caves and and definitely more potential up there. So I think if someone was motivated, they'd find a lot to do.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm sure it's just a matter of time with the rate that
Yeah.
Drew and folks like him are working through all the established boulders in Colorado. Um,
Yeah.
these guys need stuff to do. Um, can you describe the boulder? You said that you knew that this one might be even a better fit for you than some of the V15s because of the way it suits you and the fact that only shorter climbers have done it. Yeah, describe the boulder for people that aren't super familiar with it, the breakdown and kind of how it climbs and what it was about it that made you feel like this is going to be a good fit for me.
Yeah, it's like a 50-degree overhang. I think so. It's pretty steep. It, I think it doesn't photograph as steep as it actually is. And it's like kind of like the belly of this pretty large boulder. Like I feel like the tip of the boulder is probably 25 or 30 feet. Um, and there's like pretty much one seam of crimps that comes out like and climbs that whole overhanging section. And it also like it looks a little bit more like traversy in videos or photos, but you feel like you're climbing up the whole time, like just starting in the lower left corner and going to the upper right. But yeah, it's also interesting because every move is very consistent, which we were trying to think of boulders that were like as consistent as box is. And it's like definitely a different challenge than if you have a crux move or like a crux section that you need to get through. So yeah, every move, I don't really know like what grade each move would be. I feel like it's hard to grade individual moves. But yeah, you kind of like do this intro crimp sequence that's I guess probably like V15, and then you do the stand to box, which is called spread eagle, but you have to do it in a different way than you would if you were just going to do the stand because your right hand is on the left start hold.
Ah, I see. Okay. How different is the difficulty of the stand climbing it from box? Without the added fatigue, because obviously that changes everything. But just doing that sequence out of sequence, doing the stand start like backwards, how much harder do you think it is?
I think that like if you come from the bottom, so you do it like the way you would from box, it's probably like V12. And then if you do it from spread eagle, maybe it's closer to V10.
Okay.
But I never actually did the jump move on spread eagle or like that did it the standard way. So I have no idea.
Okay. Gotcha. And then, yeah.
Just the way that other people made it look. It looked maybe around V10. I don't know.
Gotcha. And then is it just small holds, small crimps pretty much the whole way?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, kind of full on, like full crimping, the whole way. I feel like there's no hold that, or actually the stand hold, the right hand start hold, or it's a left hand start on the stand, but a right hand from box is like very good, weirdly. So that's like the best hold on the climb by a lot. And yeah, it's mostly actually like technical. Like I feel like the crimping's not that hard. Or like it's not like the smallest holds I've ever grabbed, but it's quite technical and steep, and it's slots too. So if your fingers are big, the holds are a lot worse.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, gotcha. How did it feel to try it for the first time? Because it sounds like it is a really different style than some of the other hardest boulders that you've done. I read a written interview that you did where you talked about like how normally you kind of identify right away, this is going to be the stopper move for me. And you just you pour most of your focus into like the stopper move. On this one, there is no stopper move. Did you do all the moves right away? Did you have a sense that like, wow, this is possible for me? Or I could also imagine it just feeling like all these moves are pretty hard. I have no idea if I'll ever be able to string all of these together. How did it feel when you first started trying it?
Yeah, kind of more the latter. Like, okay, I can do each move and they each feel like pretty similar difficulty, but like stringing them together will be hard. And also, it feels like you need to get every hold perfect to like do the next move. So it feels like as you keep going, you have like increasingly lower probability of doing the next move. Like there's no moment to relax and like readjust. So yeah, I kind of like expected that I could do all the moves, honestly. Just looking at the style and like knowing kind of what I'm good at, I was like, I feel like none of these moves are actually at my limit. And yeah, I did all the moves on my first session. One of them was a little bit weird to try because the snowbank was so high. So I was like dabbing into the snowbank pretty hard. So maybe I technically didn't do that move, but I felt like I could if the snowbank was lower. And yeah, I feel like that you kind of almost immediately enter the mentality of like just needing to believe that you can string them together and that as you keep trying, like muscle memory will kick in and each move will start to feel easier. So yeah, in a way, there's like a level of dissociation that needs to happen.
Mm. Yeah, that I want to ask a listener question. I have maybe like 8 listener questions for you about box that I'm going to kind of mix in here as we have this conversation. How do I say this person's name? This is, I think, Ritvik. Cool name. I've never seen that name before. But Ritvik wants to know, how did you approach a grade that's never been climbed by a female before? How did you know it was within reach? I think I'm kind of more interested in that second question. Did you know it was within reach? Like, did you feel like it was worth committing a big chunk of your summer to, even if it wasn't within reach?
Yeah, I both. I think I like thought it was in reach. And also one thing that's really helpful was just like knowing that I would do it one day and that like Colorado in the summer is fairly accessible to me. So I could come back. And if I came back and still had like to go try box therapy and like had that motivation to try, like that's great because then I'll have something to do and I'll have a reason to come back. So I definitely wasn't like fussed about doing it this year. And yeah, I don't know. I think that I like you just really have to take the grade with a grain of salt and think more about like, you know, how does your climbing compare to the other ascensionists? And like, I felt like it was like probably the next logical step for me. And like wasn't all that fazed by the grade, honestly, because I feel like V14 in that style I could do pretty easily. I'd never tried V15 in that style, so like it was just sort of logical to me. Yeah.
What would you compare it to stylistically in like the V14 range? Like, what are some of the climbs you've done that felt the most similar?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Like, you know, like Penrose, I guess, Crimpy,
Penrose, Step in Leavenworth. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't done this one, but I've seen it. Myrta in Cape Town is just like in cut crimps and like sort of a crux on that one, but pretty sustained. Or like not, this one's V13, but like Nagual in Waco. Yeah. For some reason, those are like the only ones I'm thinking of, but just like kind of the in cut crimping and like bad feet. And I mean, maybe like the Swarm. Or like a lot of stuff in Bishop. Yeah, not to like, you know, be too specific, but I do think it's a style that like even on a board I'm pretty good at. And yeah, I had like set some box simulators based on like the memory of other people.
Nice.
So yeah, sort of came in a little bit prepared, but not like entirely focused on box, more just interested in trying something in that style that was going to push me.
How did that work? So, you know, you have a spray wall or something and you want to set some kind of replica for box therapy. Are you talking on the phone to Daniel or Drew or people that have climbed it, or are people actually there at the gym that have been on the climb that can kind of tell you like, oh, this hold's actually a better, you know, representation of the crux hold? Or like, what did that actually look like to just use people's memories to set a replica for a climb that you hadn't tried yet?
Yeah, it was actually just Keenan's memory because he's been up there with Sean once,
Okay.
Sean Bailey, and so he had tried like 3 years ago or something. So it was definitely, not the best simulator. But sometimes it's also just fun to like be like, oh, look, I'm training for my project. It's like going to directly translate, even though it's like not really accurate at all. And we just had like a group in Berkeley who was like psyched on this spray wall and psyched to make simulators. So it was by no means accurate or like 3D printed or anything. It was just it's good motivation, I think, for me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and yeah, there's still a lot of specificity there, right? Like if you're just climbing on a similar angle on really bad holds with bad feet, like maybe the movements are totally different and the holds are different, but I'm sure that's still a hell of a lot better than like moonboarding,
Yeah.
before going and trying a project like that. So
Yeah.
that's cool. That makes sense. Was the grade was like this is something that a number of people were curious about. Was the grade and like the first female to do it sort of thing? Was that hanging over you? Was it hard to disassociate from that or to separate climbing on this boulder from that? Was there like a weightiness there, or were you just like, no, this is a cool boulder. It suits me pretty well, and like, let's see if I can do it.
Um, yeah, I think that it's hard to like be close to doing it, or it was hard for me when I started getting close to sort of like forget about that. And in the beginning, it was like, okay, like I've got a group of friends that wants to go up there. I'm down to go up there. Like, let's just try. And I wasn't thinking about, being the first woman to climb V16 at all. And then I think like as I got closer and I realized that it was possible, it starts to become apparent that like it would be a big deal. And I don't feel like that's very helpful mentally. And to like feel like there's more riding on it. And so, yeah, like I said, it was kind of like, no, this is just something that I want to do before I die. And like, I'll come back and do it next year. And like, I could be the 20th person or woman to climb V16 and it actually wouldn't like change anything. It's not like I would want to do it less. So like kind of just putting it in perspective and realizing that like, yeah, it's the like level up boulder that I'm closest to doing right now. It's also something that I like want to do just for my own reasons and like feels completely isolated from the circumstance of the time. And that's a lot more productive, I think, than like trying to do something to be the first person to do anything. Like that's not a great headspace to be in, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that mindset. I really associate that I'm going to do this eventually mindset with you and with Keenan. I think it's so smart, and I really resonate with it. I know everyone's different, and I really marvel at the people who can show up to a boulder and the season's winding down and it's about to get hot or it's about to snow or whatever, and they're like, I have to do this now, and that pressure helps them finish it off. Like that has never really worked for me. I feel so much more enjoyment in the process, and I can focus on the process when I remind myself like, no, this thing's beautiful. It's not going anywhere. And it really doesn't have to happen like on any sort of timeline. Like it would be great if my like progression and my journey is within my own climbing matched up with this challenge right here and now. But the likelihood of that's kind of small. Like it might take another month. It might take another couple seasons of training for this thing. It'll be what it'll be. And all I can do is just try to like learn the most and like direct myself from what I'm learning on this challenge.
Yeah, I feel like actually this is something that I talked about with a few people about this summer, but like I think that some combination of that mindset is good. Like if you have a performance mindset and like that sort of like deadline that's been imposed, sometimes you can crumble, but other times you like find what's needed to get it done. And like even Daniel on box therapy, like I'm pretty sure that was the last day of the season when he did it. It was like mid-October, and I think the road had already closed, so he hiked the road and then hiked to box, and like the session before had just shoveled. I think he must have, because it's like the whole meadow snowed over.
Wow.
So yeah, I feel like that mindset can be really helpful. Like, I need to do this, like, just for myself, but like, it feels like something that I absolutely need to do.
Hmm.
Can make you focus more. And like, I talked to like Jesse Grouper a little bit about his comp season and compared to like outdoor climbing. And one thing that like we could both agree on is that there's certain times when um, it's really fun in climbing to feel like, like circumstance aside, you need to do something right now and you need to perform. And like, it doesn't matter what the weather is or like who's there, like how you feel that day. Like, you have a job that you need to do. So yeah, I don't do the comps, so I don't love that feeling, and it's not fun to me. But sometimes I think it is helpful, even in outdoor climbing, if you can manage it.
Yeah. Did you have that feeling at any stage for box?
No, I actually didn't,
Okay.
which is great.
Yeah.
I was planning on leaving at the end of August and probably would have stayed another month if I hadn't done it. And I think that mentally like allowed or gave me a little bit of room to breathe, which was really helpful. I think my headspace would have been worse if I hadn't done it by the end of August.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. How did the hike change your experience? I would love to hear you describe like a day in the life of trying this thing, because it's the whole day. And I remember reading you say that you had like quite a few solo sessions, which is just epic, like hiking 6 miles into the backcountry to try this massive boulder by yourself. I'm like, how did you have enough pads? Um, which you don't have to, I know there's like stuff in Rocky Mountain as far as like pads go. Um, there's stuff, but yeah, that's a massive amount of effort, um, and it's so like such a different climbing experience than being at something roadside with a huge gang of people. Did that change the experience? Like, what did that feel like? Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. What was a day in the life of projecting this thing like?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good question. I think like so much of bouldering is logistics and like getting the logistics right. And that it was like an absolute logistics nightmare. Like, you need to get your reservation because it's in the park now, and like yeah, just weather needs to be right, and like it kind of rains every day, so just like timing the rain is also a nightmare. But I would I usually don't climb before like noon. I don't really like operate very well, so I'm like a late to get out person, but I would get out much earlier than I normally do, probably at like 9. Mostly just so I could hike really slow,
Mm.
because I was reading some like alpine climbing books, and one thing that I noticed was that they're just always hiking like pretty slow up to base camp, if they can, like if they have the weather window, just because your legs are going to be so much fresher. So this is probably like really obvious to most people, but I don't hike that much. So I was like actively trying to go a little bit slower because my legs were getting wrecked. So yeah, I would like just pack like huge lunches, and like kind of all of the like backpacking essentials, like water filter and like high density lightweight foods. But I bring a ton of food when I'm climbing, so I would bring like rice and fish for the most part, and like some bars. And then I would always get this one raspberry crumble bar at the St. Vrain Market in Lyons, which is really good. Um, and I would also get a sandwich. So I would kind of bring like 3 meals. I would leave dinner in the car and then bring like 2 lunches up there.
Mm.
Yeah, and in the first like 4 sessions, I had people with me, which was fun. So we would just like walk pretty slow, and I had like some discussion questions that I had lined up, for when things got grim and like nobody wants to talk anymore. So
Where did you get those from? That's cool.
um, just on the first day, for some reason, someone brought up like, these are discussion questions. Like, we don't need to participate.
What
Like,
topics? Like any like life topics?
um, most of them were like scenarios. Like, my favorite was like when we're in the last mile of the hike getting back to the car and it's like midnight. Then my question would be, if you were going to get $1 million by being at box therapy at sunrise, like the next morning, so like in 6 hours or whatever, would you go back to the car or would you just hike back right now? And like, you have to be there at sunrise. So that was a good one. um, and another was like, how much money would you pay to level up by 2 grades? Like, you're guaranteed to like climb those 2 grades, but you have to put in the work. Like, it's not like you're just like instantly going to climb it. Like you put in the work, but you sort of know that you're going to. So like,
oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, like you could climb V18 or something. So those ones were kind of like climbing related, but then I had some more like life ones. There was one.
Are you just coming
like,
up with these? Like, these are just your ideas?
Yeah, I would sometimes write them down like throughout the week. I'd be like, oh, that's an interesting question, and then I write them down. A lot of them are just like random things that Keenan and I had like spitballed and like wanted extra opinions on.
I love this. I'm going to hire you as a consultant. This is like what I do, right? So like, I have kind of a journaling practice that's just me coming up with questions. It's really fun. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I love this.
Awesome.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
I want to ask you those 2 questions. So you've obviously thought about this. The $1 million question, when you've already hiked 11 miles that day and climbed all day and you're exhausted, I'm sure. Would you turn around and hike the 5 miles immediately, or would you go like nap in the car for a little bit? What would your strategy be?
I think I would nap in the car because it's kind of scary out there at night, and I think it would be a lot warmer. In fact, I might drive back to Boulder and like get food, or even to Lions or something. Like, I might restock fully and then just like go like psycho mode at like 3 a.m. and just do like take down the hike.
Nice.
That was my conclusion. I don't want to sleep there.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Just like cuddling up or like laying under your crash pad or something to stay warm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. And then what was the second question again? Oh yeah. How much money? How much money would you pay?
At first, I was like, when I first asked this question, like first group of people that I walked up there, I was like, I would probably pay like my entire life savings that's like not already allocated to something like something basic, like, like rent or like, any debts that you have or something, like the unallocated stuff even. And I probably wouldn't like pay out my 401k or something, but like all of that extra savings, if you have any, like your expendable income, I'd probably pay all of it. So, and I mean, I haven't been working that long, so that's not that much money. I'd really,
but basically all of your money. Yeah, basically all of your money. Yeah.
But then I actually walked up there with my brother, who makes a lot more money than I do, and he was like, "Oh, I wouldn't pay anything," or like he was like, "I would pay like very little," and like his conclusion was that you would climb your 2 grades harder and then immediately like feel unsatisfied and like you want to climb 2 grades harder than that or whatever, or like there's always a next thing, so you might as well just like be where you are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your brother's enlightened. That's great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of truth in that. Yeah. I mean, and there's like, I wonder how much of the satisfaction or the drive comes with the uncertainty, like there's like this glimpse, like this kind of curiosity and this question mark of like, is this possible for me? And I mean, my favorite thing about climbing is like that process that happens both in the micro when you're trying a project or in the macro where you're like, I don't know if I can do this, but then you slowly start to like unlock the pieces and start to believe, and then you eventually realize you can. Like, that's such a cool thing. So if it was just like, I'm going to do this, it's just a matter of time, and you actually knew that, like you knew that, I wonder if that would change the drive and motivation or the satisfaction when you get there.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And I think like the question should really be reframed to like, it's something 2 grades harder that you like really want to do. It's not like some like dumpy low ball. It's like something amazing that would like be like, climbing career defining for you. So yeah, I think you're right though. It's like the actual uncertainty of climbing harder that makes climbing harder interesting. It's not just like the pure numbers for most people.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, maybe if the question was like how much would you pay to hire a coach who could guarantee that you would achieve, this climb or whatever,
Right.
eventually? Like how much would you pay that coach? Make it like a little bit
Yeah.
more, because that's like kind of more normal, that's less
Yeah.
like you're just paying directly for someone to hand you the results. Like, no, this is still going to take a ton of work, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'd pay a lot of money to that coach. I think I'd pay
Yeah.
like, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars probably, which is
Yeah.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah. It is interesting. This question, not to derail us too much, this question actually really stemmed out of like um Keenan and I talking about how like we could potentially go out climbing with someone else who maybe has bad like tactics or hasn't nailed logistics or like is bad at like figuring out beta or something, and like literally just tell them one thing that would make them do their project. And like I feel like people would potentially pay for like that tip, or just like it's not even coaching necessarily, it's like literally like a third person looking at your setup and then like telling you what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was kind of the origin of the question.
Yeah. So, yeah, he's selling mustache hairs, and now you guys are going to be sending invoices to the people that you go, the Gumbies that you go climbing with. Like, you're welcome.
Oh my god, that would be heinous.
That'll be $1,000. How did the hike and the logistics change your actual experience projecting this boulder? Did it feel
Yeah.
different?
Yeah, it definitely does. Like when you're going like to a roadside boulder, you can be like, oh, I don't feel good today. I'm just gonna go to the gym or something, or I'll go somewhere else. And I think with Box, it was like, okay, I'm going Friday and I'm like devoting my whole day, and like any work stuff, I'm out of office that day, basically. And so just that planning aspect, some people really do well with, and I really don't. I'm not a great planner. So yeah, I think it can be beneficial though when you're just like, I'm here and I need to try, and I walked really far. So I like need to learn something from this session and like find out a way to make it feel like productive. And yeah, so I think, yeah, it can both be like something that you're getting into and can just like spiral down the frustration hole because you've walked so far to like do some moves. Or it can be something that you can use to your advantage and be like, I'm completely focused today. Like there's nothing else on my calendar. And I've come this far, so I need to like find some micro progress. And yeah, ultimately, like your legs just get in shape, and it feels kind of good as a boulderer to have big days, and like to feel completely wrecked the next day. And yeah, I listened to a lot of podcasts when it got dire, and had a lot of really interesting conversations with friends. So I feel like one thing is that when you're an adult, you like don't get all that much time to just have like unstructured hangout time. And climbers, I think, get a lot more of this than other people. But when you just like have nothing to do but walk and like enjoy the day, things get silly and people get tired, and it brings out like the best and worst in people. And I think I had a lot of really funny conversations and good times with friends. So I feel like I got closer to people, which is great.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. And I think your tip about hiking slow, I mean, you said like maybe this is obvious. I don't think so. I think a lot of climbers, I mean, maybe most climbers that I have climbed with in the Alpine are just way more fit than I am, because a lot of times it's like it's like someone like Ethan or I don't know, Dylan Barks comes to mind. I remember hiking up just the last part of the hike up to Upper Chaos with him one time. And I was just like, Jesus, I'm like busting my ass to keep up with this guy, and I'm not carrying a crash pad, and he is. But that makes a lot of sense. Like I remember in Bishop, like 10 or 15 years ago, hearing, I would see like the climbers that were way more experienced than me going up into the happies with like 4 crash pads, just going so slow, just doing the slow trudge, and someone was like, oh yeah, that's the crusher walk. Like the crusher walk is like, you just plod up there, you go really slow because you're saving all of your energy for this really hard thing that you're going to try. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, with something like a big 6 mile hike like that, of course it makes a difference. Like if you're kind of redlining and you're like trying to get there as fast as you can and like really pushing yourself aerobically or anaerobically, of course that's going to tax your system in a totally different way than taking your time. And um, yeah, it's really interesting and super cool that you're reading alpine training books. Like, were you reading those because of this project?
Um, no, I was having like a little bit of a craving for adventure, which is maybe also why I wanted to try box. But it was just like one book that was recommended to me, and I like the author, and like I find myself like pretty fascinated with the world of like trad and alpine climbing and try to keep up with what's happening. Even though I don't have like that much interest in doing it myself yet, but yeah, it was not even like a training mindset. It was just like enjoyment of hearing about climbing.
Hmm. What book was it, if you don't mind me asking?
It was called The Tower. It's by Kelly Cordes.
Oh, okay.
It's
Nice.
about it's about Cerro Torre in Patagonia and like all the controversy around its like ascent and
The compressor
kind of
route
its
and
history.
all
Yeah,
that. Gotcha.
yeah,
Cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I'll find a link for that one for people that want to check that one out.
yeah. I guess the slow walking was also more just from watching videos of like alpine climbing vlogs and trad climbing vlogs and stuff. But yeah, that's a good book. I think there's some slow walking in there.
And then I imagine I'm curious about your kind of strategy. Like you said you're not much of a planner, and this kind of forced you to have to plan out a little bit more. It makes sense. Um, I imagine you can't just go try this thing day on, day off like you might with some other project. What did your kind of more global strategy look like? Were you doing like some, days in the gym training to give your legs a longer rest between sessions, or were you just resting more fully between sessions? What did that look like?
Um, yeah, I pretty much didn't climb in the gym from like mid-May to early September. Um, and was doing a lot of resting. So I think I only went up to box twice in June because the walk was really bad with the snow. And it's just not that fun to be up there when it's super snowy. And then that was like I didn't go enough times. So in July I went about like once per week. I don't think I ever went more frequently than 7 days in between.
Mm,
And then I would, and mostly just because of or yeah, I feel like my legs would feel like recovered enough to do the walk after like 4 days, but then my skin took another few days. Just like I wanted to go up there with perfect skin, and then my fingers were also like sort of recovering. So I felt like going up there more than once a week was not productive. And then I would do like Lincoln days, which I was
Lincoln
trying
Lake.
something like pretty, yeah, Lincoln Lake. So I was trying something pretty close to the road. So it was like pretty minimal hiking. And also like I feel like when you're doing the box hike, your legs are in good enough shape that a Lincoln hike like feels pretty easy. So those were kind of like my like non-box climbing and hiking rest days, where I would just like climb on stuff that was not um, kind of like getting my fingers as bad or getting my skin as bad as box. So yeah, like definitely one or two rest day. I never go 2 days on anymore. So
Mm,
one or two rest days in between each climbing day. And two rest days usually before I went up to box.
okay. Gotcha. So yeah, it sounds like you would have a box day and then have rest days in between, but have like two other climbing sessions before you would rest and then go back to box. Something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. All right, let's dive into more of my patron questions. This one is from, I think, Sierra or Ciara. Apologize if I'm getting your name wrong. What was the biggest challenge for you on this boulder and how did you overcome it?
Um, the like physical. hardest part for me was transitioning from the the sit moves into the stand. So like the actual transition itself, like there's something weird about how you get the hold when you're coming from the bottom and like where your hips go. And I pretty much, upon reaching the stand from the sit, always knew if I was going to fall or not. So I spent like a whole session, like just like fine tuning micro adjustments on that transition. So I think that would technically be my red point crux. I never fell in the last move of the stand, and I fell a lot on the first move of the stand. Yeah. And then I think like the mental challenge was just, I think it's really hard when you know you can do something, and like it's just about execution. And I think that's like the least fun headspace. And it's way more fun to like be creative and problem solve and like have those like kind of moments of breakthrough that keep you coming back. And when you've like sort of plateaued and like the next step is actually just doing the boulder, that's when like mentally it can become the most challenging. So I think just like having to hike 6 miles.
Hey, friends, I hope you enjoyed the first part of that conversation with Katie Lamb. There's about an hour left of this episode. The full version is about an hour and 40 minutes. And the only way to listen to the full thing is by becoming a patron at patreon.com/thenuggetclimbing. I know that's annoying. We all love getting things for free, and I wish I could give everything away for free. The reason I do this is because I really do depend on Patreon. The podcast would not be what it is today, and in fact, it wouldn't exist if it were not for the support that I get from patrons. So it's $5 a month to sign up for Patreon. There's a link right there in your podcast app if you scroll down, and I try to make it such a no-brainer for you guys to sign up. It's only $5 a month, and you get so much bonus content. If you love the show, you'll get ad-free episodes for every single episode. You'll get all of the follow-up episodes like this one. And also, if you become a patron, I might ask your question on the show, like you've already heard in this episode. The rest of this episode, about an hour, features mostly questions from patrons, and it was really great. They were really great questions, really insightful and interesting. And as always, several of them led to really interesting discussions with Katie. We got a lot deeper into her projecting mindset and philosophy, basically what she thinks the key is for sending hard boulders, at least for her. We talked about her specific project strategy and how she went about working on box therapy. We talked about why grades should be taken with a grain of salt, and more of her thoughts on skipping V15 and what the takeaway is for the rest of us, and so much more. This was a really great episode. And once again, you can go listen to it right now by signing up for Patreon. All right, once again, I hope you'll consider signing up. I really appreciate you guys for listening and for all of the support, whether you're supporting financially or just listening to the podcast and sharing it with your friends. That helps a lot as well. So thank you. I hope you have an amazing week, and we will see you next time.
Move with the rhythm, shake it up, stop when the clock hits